Welcome back to Life Without Secrets. Today, we're diving into a conversation about resilience, authenticity, and redefining success with someone who's living these values every day. Kayla Logue is a best-selling author, nonprofit founder, personal development expert, and the proud owner of Jet Set Pilates franchise. Once chasing a picture-perfect life that felt hollow beneath the surface, Kayla walked away from it all with just $900 in her pocket and a determination to live authentic. That is such a hard word. Authentically. Now she dedicates her life to help others sculpt their own destinies and to find success on their own terms. In this episode, Kayla shares her incredible journey, the lessons she's learned along the way, and the tools she uses to help people step into their power, embrace imperfection, and create lives filled with purpose and joy. If you're looking for inspiration to make bold moves and start living for yourself this year, this episode is for you. Kayla, welcome to Life Without Secrets.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be on here.
Yeah, I know. That's gonna be fun. I love just, like, taking this and chatting about it, but I first want people to just really get to know you and your journey this far from, like, surface level fulfillment to a life of purpose. I think that in 2025, a lot of people are gonna be striving for that,
Yeah.
and so as we're coming into the new year, we're making our goals, and some of us are maybe lacking the confidence to go after the things that we really feel in our heart we should be doing, but holding back for this one thing over here. So I want you to take us back to that moment when you decided to leave that old version of yourself behind. What did life look like then? How did it feel? And what kind of sparked a bold change?
Yeah. So my big move, start of the change happened during COVID, which I
Mm,
also think if we reflect back to 2020, we all had some sort of crazy COVID story or kind of epiphanies in our life. And
yeah.
mine just happened to be extremely radical, but it also was time and epiphanies that kind of built up. It wasn't just one random moment that happened, but it definitely was the moment where I was like, I have to make moves. So I just had the clarity that I was constantly living, checking off the boxes, as I say, of society, right? Doing the
Hmm.
things that made other people happy and investing too much energy into that rather than really asking myself the deep intentional questions of what I really wanted, where I wanted to
Yeah.
be, who I wanted to be with. And rather than pleasing other people, I was only pleasing other people.
Hmm.
And rather than focusing on, again, what I truly wanted. And so when I started asking myself those questions, I realized I was not in a marriage I wanted to be in. I realized I was capped out in growth with my job. I realized I was
Hmm.
just focused on what the external looked like rather than how I really felt internally. I mean, on the outside, like the picture perfect life, as I even write in my book, was very much a picture perfect. We had beautiful houses, we had a great dog. My
Hmm.
ex-husband was very intelligent and smart, and I managed Pilates studios then. It just nothing felt right. And I just was stuck
Hmm.
until I finally was like, I need to start over. I really have no other choice. So don't get me wrong. I tried multiple different ways to maneuver and figure this out. And then in 2020, it just all hit the fan. And
Hmm.
I took $900 and was like, I have no idea where I'm going to go. I don't have a job. The world shut down with the pandemic and I'll
Hmm.
just figure it out. And flash forward to now. I mean, of course, I feel like 1,000 lives lived in between that moment and then where I am now. A lot of healing, a lot of ups and downs, definitely a lot of growth, but through it all, I definitely have learned a lot of the times the hard way.
Hmm.
But I also was focused on only really making myself happy. And that may sound super selfish, but it was the most selfless thing I could do at the time. And now that I've really invested into myself,
Hmm.
now I'm able to start helping other people, right? By even starting the nonprofit that I have and really
Hmm.
focusing on sharing my story in a book that I know can be super helpful for other people. And then even starting now and owning the Pilates studio to bring people and be the best versions of themselves. So really reinvesting into myself to help other people become the best versions of themselves too.
Yeah. And I wanna recap on what you said when you can make yourself happy. And I think is not selfish, and I just wanna clarify that, like, for people listening too. And the reason why it's not selfish as is that when you can make yourself happy, you're not looking externally for someone to create happiness in your life. Like, when people are looking at, "Oh, if I just get this job, then I'll be happy. If I just get married, then I'll be happy," right? "If I just get to have that baby I want, then I'll be happy." And the truth is, like you're saying, like happiness is not something we find externally. It's something that we work on in ourselves internally, which is I think what your point is too. And I love that you have a book about that. Tell us about, well, there's so many questions I have, but maybe first I'm going to ask you, like, what's one thing people might not know about you that has actually been a major driver to your personal and professional growth? Because I think some people are like, oh, they listen in on these conversations and they think, well, that's not me, or I couldn't do that because I'm stuck. You felt stuck. What is there something that was like a major driver for you to be able to, step outside of your comfort zone in that moment of being in that stuck position? Because that is a comfort level actually for all of us, regardless if we want to admit it or not. We stay in situations because they're comfortable, because it's uncomfortable to do the opposite.
For sure.
Yeah, so what was the driving force for you during that time?
I think like really during that time, if I reflect, I definitely felt very numb, and when you're in that stuck position, you really don't know what to do. You really
Mhm,
don't. But I definitely had this pull and like feeling of I know I'm meant for much more. I know I'm meant to feel a lot more than I do right now. I don't know what that looks like, but
mhm,
that feeling towards that energy was enough to make me make the decision. And I think simply put for anybody to take away is your life it can be one choice away, right?
mm,
Your a better life can be one choice away. If you are feeling stuck, you have the choice to stay there and be complacent and coast through life, or you make a choice to change it. And yeah, it's uncomfortable, and yeah, it's uncertain, and yeah, it's scary. But what's the counter? You stay stuck, you stay where you're at and complacent and
mhm,
hope it gets better. And a lot of times it doesn't because you're stuck. And then or you just you give it a try, a good old fashioned try. And a lot of the times when you're staying in that authentic wavelength,
mhm,
things work out. It shouldn't feel forced. Life doesn't feel forced. And again, even through the past years, and I mean, I have a lot more growing and development to do, but I've realized anything that is meant to be, it doesn't feel hard. It's hard, it's challenging, hard
mhm,
work, commitment,
mhm.
dedication, but it doesn't feel like work at the same time. So it's when you're following that path, it just feels so much easier. It's easy in a sense.
Yeah, and I think too that I was just talking about this with my husband the other day actually. When I step into something new, I have built this belief system in that everything will work out. Like it always works out for me. And I even tell myself that. And I think that that's been years of me choosing the hard,
Hmm.
that I have proven to myself that it will always work out for me. Not necessarily the way that I want it to all the time, but the way that I feel is meant for me to learn something from. Is
Absolutely.
that has that been true for you too?
Oh, 100%. I couldn't agree more. It's almost this like extreme confidence that you have, and even when we're not confident in everything, right? There's
Mhm.
days that we go in this downhill spiral and we're like, what are we doing? What is going on?
Mhm, mhm.
I have no idea what I'm doing. And I find myself thinking that like 85% of the time, but it always ends up working out.
Yeah.
Even the times in my mind how I create something to be,
Mhm,
it doesn't always work out that way, but that's
mhm.
what I'm working towards. And then sometimes something great doesn't happen or the other happens, right? It's just
Yeah.
at the end of the day, life is all about choices, right? If there's a
Yeah.
setback, we've got to turn it into a comeback, right? If it's a failure, you really only fail if you quit. So
Mhm.
it's constantly again being resilient through it all
Yeah.
and just and choosing to make the choices that, if you believe in something, that you have enough belief in something no matter what it is and that the purpose is big enough, you won't stop. And I think
Mhm.
even what you're saying with choosing the hard and just continuing to believe in yourself totally resonates with that.
Yeah. Well, and I know that I think I read maybe on your website that you did grow up with a mom telling you that no dream is too big. How has this kind of helped shape your belief on your journey, and how did it influence your decision to take risks and pursue your purpose?
Fortunately, I've been super blessed with a very supportive mom, dad,
Mhm.
younger sister. And during that time of my life when I was trying to figure it out, their love and support has been huge for
Mhm.
me. So that's the self belief in myself. I think a lot of it came from being fostered in a family that did truly believe do whatever you want. You can turn anything that you want into something successful. And I think that subconscious, I think that was ingrained for me as a child.
Mhm.
What I realized when I was stuck, I'm like, this isn't the big dreams my mom was telling me about. I know I have much
Yeah.
bigger dreams and I'm choosing not to turn those dreams to my reality. So I definitely believe that support system and anybody I know everyone's situation with families and friends is very different, but I
Mhm.
do think no matter if you're going through a hard time, there are people out there that are willing to help. And if you're wanting to make some big moves or changes and you need that support, seek it out. It's just asking for the help.
Yeah. And how do you think people that don't have, those parents or those people in their life that are like they're raving mom fans or cheerleaders in their lives, that believe in them? Where should we find those people? Because I think it is hard, and I think that there's a lot of, insecurities that are built probably from looking on social media and feeling like we have to pretend that everything is fine on the outside, even if we are struggling, and so I think there's a gap between what people really need to have those people in their life for confidence building within them to help them through that, and people and the amount of people that really get that from others. Does that
Yeah,
make sense? I think
absolutely.
there's a gap there that we need to fill. I wanna know how do we find these people
So, I
lives?
mean, I find with social media, we're more
Mhm,
connected than ever, yet we're more disconnected than ever because
mhm,
everything is virtual
mhm.
and energy to me is so much more important in person. I mean, I'm so glad we're able to do this, record this. You're in California, I'm on the East Coast.
Yeah, it's so
But at the
fun.
same time, that connectivity is so important. And that's where moving towards starting the nonprofit that I have was really important. It's creating a culture for young professionals to thrive. So, fill in that gap
Mm,
mentally and physically. We do events that really focus on a workout for the body and a workshop for the mind. So we take
ooh,
whether it's yoga or boxing or hit classes, Pilates, and we have that was as one portion, and then we bring a motivational speaker or that covers a topic that has to do with like mental health, whether it's anxiety or confidence. So creating that community and that network of people that have a growth mindset. But of course, moving towards isn't everywhere yet. The plan is to get it everywhere. But where I would say to start is gyms. Find a local
mhm,
gym because the connectivity there for me, anytime I was traveling, like I'd always find a gym because the people that are there obviously care about their health, their physical health, but ultimately that translates into your mental health. I mean, I truly believe physical
mhm.
health is the significance of mental health. You
Yeah,
always feel better after you work out. So I really think that's a great place to start. Everyone, there's so many boutique fitness studios. There's obviously big box gyms, whatever kind of fits your vibe. But
yeah.
that's to me for connectivity and being in person. I think it's the best place to start.
Yeah, I think that's actually such a good point, but I like that you're pointing out more of a group model is what I'm hearing you say. Because when I go to the gym and I go to the weight section, I feel like everybody's wearing headphones and I'm
Yeah.
just like smiling, "Hey guys." Like
Yeah, right.
nobody's talking to me. And then I'm like, gosh, should I really ask this person to show me how to work this machine? I don't know. He just looks really into his headphones right
Yeah,
now. Like
for sure.
so I think there is a point there too of choosing like if you're really looking for connection and confidence, maybe it's a different type of working out. What do you think?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think
Okay.
that's where, especially like boutique fitness, I mean, it's a lot of
Mhm.
the times more expensive. It's definitely more expensive than going to your regular box gym where people are lifting weights and you're like, what do I do? One, obviously, you have personal trainers there, there's instructors there, they're telling you what to do. But two, the community is unmatched. People go there, they kind of like turns in, it's not like a cult, but depending on where you go, like people go there because of the people that are there.
Mhm.
And I think that speaks volumes, especially now going into this franchise and opening these Pilates studios. One of the major pillars of these studios is the community. That people not only do you need to provide a good service, but if the community is super strong, people are going to come there just because they want to be a part of it. And people want
Yeah.
to be involved. People want to grow their network. So I really find that those type of group fitnesses, even for me, like I know how to go to a gym, I know how to lift weights, I know how to work
Mhm.
out, but I'll still go to all different boutique studios in this
Mhm.
area just to meet new people and to
Yeah.
talk. So I think that's super important. And I do think it's a great place to start because naturally it's like, oh, go to a bar, talk to people. Well, then you have too many drinks, you wake up, you're hungover. That's not really the place to
No.
grow and be supported, right? Which is also one of the main reasons we started moving towards for younger professionals. So I think gyms, group fitness, being strategic about that. If you're not into like high intensity, higher impact workouts, go to yoga, right?
Mhm.
Or Pilates. So there's something at this point in the fitness industry for everybody. You
Yeah,
just gotta look for it.
I agree. And I don't want people to miss. So moving towards is your nonprofit. Tell us a
Yes.
little bit about how that got started.
So moving towards, I had the idea for it when I was writing my book. Because at the end of each chapter of my book is a journal prompt.
And
And journaling, I'm a huge advocate for. I thought it was the stupidest idea before I actually did it when I was 25. And then it it's crazy how it actually honestly was probably the one tool that really changed my life, gave me a lot of clarity, a lot of healing, and it's something I'm extremely passionate about.
Mhm.
So the combination, how I briefly explained the events that we're doing currently with the workout for the body, workshop for the mind. So we have the physical activity, but obviously the physical activity brings opportunity to open up more clarity mentally.
Mhm.
So the movement into words combines really with the journaling aspect. So it all came about when I was writing my book and I was like, I love these journal prompts, but I want to make more of an impact.
Mhm.
And so that's how the nonprofit, just bringing more groups of younger professionals, we found that there was a void of not being able to find people that have growth mindsets in one community. So the people that are
Mhm.
showing up to these events want to be better versions of themselves. So creates a great network. Again, just a fun event to do.
Mhm.
So it just started because I knew that we definitely needed it, right?
Yeah.
And there's a huge void to fill with it.
So, and are these located near you right now, or where are these located? How do people get involved in that?
Yeah, so right now we're just in the Charlotte area.
Okay.
Last year was our first year of doing events, and it was super successful. They were awesome. Our first event this year is going to be on February 8th. And we did quarterly events last year. We're hoping to do more like bi-monthly this year. We were just, anytime you start something new and you're getting a feel for it, we wanted to really get the reins on what our main mission was, what the impact we wanted to make, and grow accordingly with
Mhm.
feedback and people getting more involved. So now we're pretty clear on exactly what we want to do and with the expansion plan and how we want to go out. But yeah, we want it to be in every city possible. So, but right now it's just in the Charlotte area.
And you said it's nonprofit. So, do people pay to go to this? How does this work?
So we've done some free events. We've done a couple events where it's like $10. It's
Oh,
nothing
okay.
crazy. All obviously it's just more like donation based. I mean, people that
Yeah.
come and they want to attend and they pay $10. It's tax deductible. So
Right.
now we have more of like actual like a sponsorship program plan, everything along those lines. We launched our big first fundraising initiative. It's lofty, but it'll happen. Operation 1 million journals with the goal of putting 1 million journals in the hands of 1 million young professionals. So $10 is one donation for one journal, essentially.
Oh, I love that.
Um, so that's again newer beginning phases, but also there's a lot of really great back end work going on behind the scenes too.
That is so cool. And so, and the journals are in also in your book, right? Like people can get some journal questions in your book.
Yeah. So at
And
the end of each chapter, there's like a lemon drop, which is this
mhm,
key takeaway and summary of the chapter because the book's called Always Squeezing Lemons.
I
And
love
then
that.
and then there's the journal prompt. And
It's
so
so cute.
that key takeaway is like when you'd see like a meme on Instagram, you're like, ooh, gives you like the chills, and you're like, oh,
Yeah.
I totally resonate with that. And then the journal prompt is pretty much there for it to be able to reflect and apply for your own life. So it's pretty strategic at the end of each chapter. So even if you were to just get the book and then just do the 12 journal prompts and they'll read the lemon drops, you'll definitely take something away from it.
Yeah, I love that. And I love the name and the lemon drops. It's so cute. Uh, so you talk a lot about redefining success on your own terms. What does success look like for you now, and how has it evolved since the old version of you when COVID hit?
Yeah, I mean, definitely re-hitting back on the fact that like success for me, I was just chasing the next thing. When
Mm,
it used to look that way. I was just
mhm,
going for the next thing, the next like check mark of what I felt like I was supposed to be doing, more so focused on the external stuff rather than being more of a challenging the status quo style and doing
mhm,
things that I truly wanted. And now I really focus more on the daily progress rather than the big
mhm,
wins. I
mm,
think we get so wrapped up in how you said earlier in the next big check mark, right? If I have this baby, I'll be happy. And all these,
mhm.
if I win this title, I'll be happy. When really, if you're not enjoying the journey along the way, nothing
Yeah.
means anything. So, and I've learned that in multiple ways in my life. Like even for example, when I say that, I worked in real estate the past 4 years. I was a top sales producer one year. I won the Rolex. Like it was a huge award. And I have received more reward by just hearing a random person reach out to me and say,
Mhm.
"Hey, I love your book,"
Yeah.
right? Than that. So, because I know it's helpful, right? It's, hey, this book like really has helped me apply to start journaling. To me, that means so much more. So, more
Mhm.
of shifting from consumption to contribution.
Yeah.
So that's, I mean, it's been definitely a big shift, but at the same time, small progress is where I focus on my daily health, mentally, physically. If I can get that stuff in, which I always do, it's a priority. I'm happy.
Yeah, I love that. I think a lot of people too are scared to fail. Like and I think that's a lot of the reason why people hold back from stepping out of the place that they're stuck in or from actually doing the things that their heart desires. Why do you think so many people chase this illusion of perfection? And how can we start to let go of that pressure?
Well, if we think about it, I mean, just like anything, like failure is pretty subjective, just
Mm,
as success is. I mean, of course, there are things where it seems like a failure, but I mean, I don't know too many people that are super successful that haven't royally failed. I mean, that have gone
mhm,
completely bankrupt, have lost it all, and then have become multi-million billionaires, right? So if you really think about it, it's failure is very temporary and success can also be.
mm,
I think it's just one of those things where if rather than being so focused on the yes, no's, failure, success, and we just prioritize what we deeply truly want and have a large enough purpose and do everything in our absolute power to get there,
mhm.
you won't like actually truly fail. Because even if you have a huge setback, you'll turn it into a comeback. It's
Yeah.
just, it's not giving up. It's not just throwing in the towel and it's not just coasting and being complacent.
Mm,
So I get being scared of it. If also I believe if you're not scared of big things, you don't care enough about it,
mhm.
right? I think
Good point.
that fear is really important, right? And
Mhm,
channeling that fear into rather allowing it to paralyze you, but being able to capitalize on it is really important too.
mhm,
So it's really just changing the narrative around failure and fear. And I write like kind of a lot about that in my book and how that feeling of fear and failure transitioned over time. Because I mean, subjectively, getting a divorce is failure. That
mhm.
is complete a failed marriage, right? And then failed relationships. But that was those were mistakes that I made,
Yeah.
and you learn from them and you
Mhm.
overcome them. So yeah, I think it's really just changing that narrative.
Yeah. I think that you're onto something there too. I think people feel trapped by societal expectations, or maybe it's like the life people present on Instagram. It's like a overnight success type of situation in every shape or form, whether it's in college or marriage or career paths or what have you. How do you help others break free from these molds and just live more authentically? Maybe use a story in your own life or from your book even.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely live in like the microwave society. We heat things up for a couple seconds and we expect it just to be ready, hot and warm and to go. And
Oh
that's
my gosh, I
totally not
love that
how
analogy.
I write that in my
Sorry.
book too. That's
It's so good.
it's totally not how that works though. And I mean, the intentional practice, like I said, that really helped me was journaling. I've always been an athlete my whole life. So physical activity when I was stressed out or confused, that's what I would turn to. Till I realized I was just like constantly trying to like outrun and beat my thoughts away, right? That athlete
Mhm,
mentality, suck it up, rub some dirt on it. And that's what I would do, which doesn't actually help.
mhm.
You have to actually process these things. And
Yeah.
being vulnerable with yourself first and being honest with yourself first is so important because how are we going to be honest and tell people what we want if we don't even know what we want or if we're
Mm,
not willing to put it out there for ourselves?
mhm,
So really starting with that like deep intentional work personally, because I think a lot of the times we almost talk ourselves out of these things because of how we feel based off of external validation, right? Or based off of social media or based off of these pressures that we don't even realize are pressuring us because we're not
mhm,
being intentional enough with what we deeply truly want. So,
mhm,
starting off with that, and even if it's stuff that you think this seems just crazy or delusional, or I don't even want to admit this to myself, write it down. Write
mhm.
it the F down.
Yeah.
And it's crazy how that stuff just starts to unfold because the things that I wrote down, like when I decided I want to write my book, I had no job, I had no money, and I was like, I'm going to write a book. Well, I wrote the book, right? And I
Mhm,
had a whole story to share. So it's just when you start writing these things down, you become more clear on your purpose, you become clear on what you actually truly deeply want. It,
mhm.
it does start to unfold.
Yeah, that's powerful. I feel like that's a huge piece of starting something is building that self-awareness like you're talking about. I wanna
Mhm.
know what role did self-accountability play in your transformation?
Ooh, a lot. I think it's one of those things where don't get me wrong, there were times where I mean, I even write about in chapter 4, it's called Your Trauma is Your Trauma. And there were times where I was not handling trauma correctly, poor coping mechanisms, turning to
Mhm,
things that really didn't make sense. But having the self-awareness to acknowledge these things is really, really important. So honing in on that, unless you're aware of those certain situations and you're not able to or you're able to like take them and make them better for yourself, you're just going to stay where you're at. You're not going to grow. You're not going to be able to turn those into essentially comebacks, right? A lot of the times we end up hindering ourselves without even realizing it or not
mhm.
wanting to realize it. So it's just, it really is deep diving into the like deeper self-awareness, if that makes
Yeah,
sense.
totally makes sense to me. Did you get help on processing this stuff?
So, I've never actually paid for a therapist.
Mhm.
Now, my sister, she's a double major in psychology and Spanish, and she was actually pretty much like she's a licensed therapist
Mhm.
to a certain extent. She worked with like younger children that were in abusive homes, and I
Mhm.
mean, she's crazy smart. She's the one that actually helped me start journaling. But
Mhm.
I pretty much had free therapy for a long time.
That's
And
amazing.
she's great because she's completely unbiased. Yeah, she's my younger sister, but there's no sugarcoating. It would pretty much be like I'd call her and say, "Hey, like I need some time." And she knew what that was. It's almost like she turned on like her therapist mind.
Mhm.
And so yeah, I mean, again, going back to the support system, I've had amazing friends. I've had amazing obviously support from my family, and they've all given very unbiased opinions. A lot of the times they would tell me things that I know they didn't want to tell me, right?
Mm.
So I definitely received help. Just I fortunately have had that support where I could turn to rather than having to necessarily go pay somebody for it. But I do think no matter whatever situation you're in, I think you have to find somebody to talk to. And if you don't have somebody looking to find a therapist that works for you and trying other therapists out is super important.
Yeah. It's so interesting that you say that because my little sister is actually a psychologist as well.
Yeah.
And, yeah, and so when I started going through my kind of transformational stage where I was really getting to know myself, and because my story is similar to yours in that I was hitting all these milestones and getting all these accomplishments and proving everybody wrong or proving them right or
Yeah.
whatever, but really hadn't taken the time to get to know me on a
Hmm.
deeper level. And so I actually remember calling my sister as well, and I said, "This is what I'm looking for. This is how I feel." And she wasn't really my therapist, but she helped me find the right therapist, and it was interesting because she picked this lady, and she didn't know her personally, she just read about her and what her certifications and everything were, and I, like, loved her and went to her for a while, and it was super helpful just to process that information and kinda help walk with me. I do think, um I think therapy is so good. I think we should have be building tools and systems with therapy. Something I actually want to talk about another podcast with my husband as well, because I think we have opened up this idea of therapy, but then this is I don't believe that therapy is something that we do for the rest of our lives. I think this is like a way to help process and gain tools that then we have to implement into our lives to get better. Instead
Hmm.
of going every week for the rest of our lives and talking about the same thing, we have to be able to move through and forward. And so that's just my personal opinion on it. And I don't know what your thoughts are, but I think that we're meant to grow, not stay the same. And with that, there's time periods where I'm going to go back to her through another difficult phase of life because that's life. We don't get through something and expect life to be easy and perfect because that doesn't exist, right?
For sure. No, and I think it's important. I mean, obviously going to a therapist, sharing your feelings, sharing where
Mhm.
you're at, and
Mhm.
then providing information on how to fix it. And then if we just store that information and do nothing with it and not implement it, then we're just pretty much wasting our time, right?
Mhm.
We're just venting at that point. We're not
Yeah.
fixing anything. So I completely agree. I think the tools, the resources, and some people are very different. Some people it takes longer. Like
Yeah.
there's no
Totally.
timeline on it.
No.
There's no there shouldn't be any expectations on personal development and growth because if somebody's like, "Oh, I have it all figured out and I'm done growing and I'm amazing," then you shouldn't be talking to them anyway.
Yeah.
So
Well,
it's one
watch
of
out
those
for your
things.
next obstacle.
Right, exactly. So, I mean, I think there's different times in our lives where there's certain areas that we need to work more on. I mean,
Mhm.
there's people that I'm sure that have suffered. Obviously, I know there's tons of people that have suffered a lot of loss, and
Mhm.
people that need to have tools and resources for something like that, compared to just wanting to be more in personal development and grow more as an individual within themselves. It's very different.
Mhm.
But I also think it's just giving yourself grace, and again, going back to the self awareness and emotional intelligence level, like being aware enough to take that step
Yep.
and also vulnerable enough to be willing to do so. And I do appreciate that. I do feel like there's much more of a movement around the
Mhm.
mental health being
Yeah.
vulnerable than there ever was.
Yeah, me
Don't get
too.
me wrong,
Mhm.
it's still hard. It's definitely not perfect because we hear all these things and we're still like constantly thrown in the face of perfection every single day.
Yep.
And then AI adds an entire new dynamic to the challenges that I think are going to be coming to be faced in the next really years to come.
Yeah.
So when it comes down to it, it's it is super important just to be yourself. I believe we're all here and we all have our own individual important purpose, but it's up to us and it's our responsibility to tap into it, not waste
Mm.
it.
So good. Yeah, I totally agree. Well, so in your book, you share your story and there's journaling prompts to get us started. What do you recommend after that? What did your journey look like? I know you began getting to know yourself, but like for those that's okay, I'm going to start here. What do you think is next or what happened for you or what can people expect or a simple step they can take with the journaling that can help move them towards more fulfillment?
Yeah, I think honestly checking in on your habits is really important because there's certain things and like doing almost like an audit of your day, week,
Mm.
months, and really being specific on things that light you up and things that don't, right? And figuring out ways, of course, there's things on in a daily basis that we have to do that we may
Mhm.
not want to do, right? That's just how life sometimes works. But
Mhm.
at the end of the day, filling your life more with things that do serve your life, right? And in terms of habits, maybe if you're watching too much TV, well, cut that time in half and read a book the other half because I do believe in what I help people talk through people. I'm like, don't try to do the whole crash diet fad or just cut everything out. That it's not that's not building habits. That's not gonna help you. It's the progress over time. So just getting
Mhm.
1% better every day. I mean, I know we hear it, we see it, but really actually applying that. There's so much advice, there's so much of kind of the same stuff, but if you actually do it, it makes a big difference. So I think that's super important aside from if you're wanting to grow and you're wanting to develop yourself and be more intentional. Journaling is a great place to start with that, but also aligning it with your other day-to-day actions because if you just spend 5 minutes a day journaling, but you're also doing a bunch of other unhealthy things, getting
Mhm.
drunk every night or going out, so not sleeping and not working out, then you're still not going to feel great. It's not going to do much for you. So really aligning what you want with your daily actions as well.
Yeah, Pastor Rick always says, "We underestimate what we can do in a long period of time, but we overestimate what we can do in a short period of time." So if we can even look at bigger picture and start smaller, just like you're talking about, like start with the smaller habits to get to the bigger ones as well. Like I was just talking to a friend the other day about working out and it's a time thing, and I'm like, just start putting your workout clothes next to your bed at
Mhm.
nighttime
Exactly.
and putting them on in the morning. Like, you don't even have to do your workout yet. Like, just
Yeah.
start small. And then the next week, okay, I'm gonna do 10 minutes, and that's all I have. Or maybe you have time between a meeting and you can do 10 push-ups.
Right.
Sometimes I think we start really these big overestimating goals on what's going on in our lives,
Mhm.
and then I think that's how we form this belief that we don't get things done, rather than starting small and then we come up with the belief that we can, you
The
know?
microwave society.
The
It's
microwave, we're yes,
it's
we are back to
expecting
that.
the results in a second. You're not used to working out or you don't really work out too much. And then you're
Yeah.
like, but I'm gonna be the fittest person ever in a week. And
Yeah.
it's just but it sounds crazy when you say it out loud, but a lot of the times those are expectations that live in our minds.
Yeah.
And until we can kill that and realize you just have to stay consistent and get a little better each day. And that's why I really love the book Atomic Habits, because that's literally the
Yeah.
entire principle of the book
Yep.
is small things, small things, small things. And then all of a sudden it's just boom,
I
right?
pick
It
Yeah.
blows up and it happens and
Yep.
it's there, but it doesn't happen in 5 minutes.
Yep.
You know? So,
I paid my teenager to read that book. Like, I paid him,
oh,
like,
I
a
love that.
job. Yeah, I'm
It's
like,
a great book. I mean, it's a perfect book to pay them to read, though,
yeah, and I actually think we do more of that, right? If we, like, reward ourselves for even those little things, I think are really important for growth too. But it's
for sure.
funny, like, we kept talking about the microwave analogy, and I just wanted to share this little tiny story. My grandma, she's 106. She'll be 107 this year in
What?
2025.
That's
Mhm.
incredible.
Yeah, and I will never forget her telling us a story about when the microwave came out, and my grandpa had given her a microwave for Christmas, and she was so mad. Like, it was like, "How dare you give me a microwave? Like, you don't like my cooking."
Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
that's so funny.
So, it's just it's interesting, and now we use it all the time because we're, like, think we're in a rush and we're wanting to get to that thing faster, right? And so if we just go back to the basics, it's just
Yeah.
goes with that. I was like, "Oh, that's
That is
interesting."
so true, but
Mhm.
back to the basics, right?
Yeah.
Because, I mean,
Mhm.
if we were to go even gosh, when I was a kid
Mhm.
now all kids have iPads and iPhones, like, I lived outside. My mom wouldn't be able to find my sister and I, we'd be in we yeah, so
Like
it's just crazy and how that's completely already even transitioned, right?
yeah.
So
Well, and I think COVID, going back to your story even, is like it forced people to pause, right?
mhm,
Where like I think we're pretty much right back to that rushed energy of the world. But I think COVID, if we look at the positives, it's okay, well, it actually forced a lot of us to just pause and take a step back and go, what is going on in my life, really? Like, how
mhm.
do I actually feel about this? And
It's
so
so
it
true.
brought up a lot for people, I think. And we can look at that as a negative or we can look at it as an opportunity for growth. So I love what you did. And I think that's absolutely amazing. I want to know what's one lesson you've learned that has made the biggest impact on your life and the lives that you also work with. One lesson.
I mean, gosh, I feel like I have so many different ones, but I
Yeah.
think one of the biggest things that is really important and just simple and that can be applied for anybody is when you realize you can be the cause, problem, and solution for everything in your life, your world changes. So it's
Mm-hmm.
that real like radical responsibility, like mental narrative shift.
Mm-hmm.
And we again go back to the fear. We hold ourselves back because we're scared of the future that isn't real yet. We're scared of
Mm-hmm.
these situations that we make up in our minds, create anxiety around it, and it's not real. It's the what ifs.
Mm-hmm.
And when we think of the what ifs, usually it's in a negative narrative. Well, what if I fail? What if this sucks? Right? Rather than, well, what if I succeed? What if I am super happy? And so it's really that super controlled narrative of, well, even if I do, it's a setback or it doesn't work out. Well, I'll figure it out. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So just realizing that we're all responsible for our lives, our choices, and we get to choose every single day. And that's really all we can do is do the best we can making the right choices. And a lot of times we're going to choose the wrong thing and
Yeah.
accepting that and being okay with that.
I literally couldn't agree more. I think that's
Mhm.
awesome. How can our listeners connect with you from here, learn about your nonprofit, what you're doing, and also dive into your book, Always Squeezing Lemons?
Yeah, so if you just go to my website, kaylalogue.com, it has everything. It has my nonprofits link there. My Instagram is mostly LinkedIn, everything like that's there. My book, you can buy it on my website. My email, like anything and everything. I'm super easy to get a hold of. I love talking to people that reach out, love connecting, love answering
Awesome.
any questions, love hearing feedback. So
I love that. Well, thank you for coming on here and sharing your incredible journey with us and really like your success story from chasing perfection and now you embrace growth every day. So I think that's really cool. I love hearing your story and learning more about you and I know everybody listening has too. So thanks for coming on.
thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. Well, to all our listeners, I want to know what's one step you can take today to invest in your growth and move closer to the life you're meant to live. Remember, transformation doesn't just happen overnight, it's the result of consistent effort, self reflection, growing that self awareness. Don't forget to get her book and the courage to face challenges head on. So, thanks for tuning in to Life Without Secrets. If today's conversation inspired you, share it with someone who could use a little encouragement to take the next step. And as always, stay curious. Stay committed and keep growing. See you next time. Hey there, it's Jillian from Life Without Secrets. Ever feel like you and your partner aren't quite on the same page? Well, you're not alone. And that's exactly why I created our latest issue of Truthful magazine. It's packed with insights and stories about bridging that gap and finding a deeper connection. We're diving into real conversations about needs, feelings, and how honest dialogue can rekindle that closeness that you've been missing. Why not explore this together? Go grab your free copy right now at lifewithoutsecrets.com and turn those pages into shared moments. Can't wait for you to dive in and share your thoughts with me.